Good morning, folks. In the face of all of this bear market stuff and the hysteria around the climate and the coronavirus, I thought we should have a frank chat because there's many folks that are confused about the circumstances that have led up to all of this and how there is quite possibly a plan behind it all. And of course, the plan is aimed straight at the heart of free market capitalism. The plan is to make us greater and greater slaves of the state by being beholden to them at all times. So here it is. I'll say it in Norwegian. De torsdag den 12. March. It is Thursday, the 12th of March. Thank you for listening, because I have some serious things I'd like to share that apply to both Canada and Norge. So let's get to it. Many don't seem to understand that the most dangerous relationships are created when powerful entities like the Tides Foundation, SNC-Lavalin, Bombardier, McCain Foods, the Open Society Foundations, Irving Oil, and Irving Shipbuilding, just to mention a few. I could mention a few in Norway too, but I won't at the moment. For the sake of argument, we'll talk about our current crisis in Canada. These entities are engaged in pay-for-play relationships with our government. And these relationships, although have grown deeper under the Liberal government, are not completely associated with the Liberal government. They're just associated with the nature of how Canadian government has functioned for a great long time. But as with most things, it's either improving or it's degenerating. And we're seeing a level of corruption and degeneration, which are inevitable because things that aren't moving toward order are heading toward entropy, toward chaos. So this is the situation we're in right now that has formed the background for the current bear market. These sort of relationships create corrupt monopolies that completely undermine the democratic process. And this results in the destruction of free market capitalism. Because free market capitalism can only function when the market alone decides. The recent ever-increasing attack on our economy is a direct result of the state being unduly influenced by these relationships. This is further compounded by these entities hiring protesters to manipulate the ability of the market alone to decide while hiding behind a guise of environmental concern and native land rights. This manipulation has created a completely false narrative, which much of the public buys into because they have created a story of victimhood while ignoring the real victims of this utterly corrupt and immoral process. Our system of government was designed to answer to the constituents in each constituency, not wealthy lobbyists. As a result, our elected representatives have become political whores for sale to the highest bidder. This system has a name. What is the correct definition for the state deep in bed with private entities, whether they're, allegedly or purportedly charities, which of course, these charities are all run by people that operate hedge funds and that are deliberately shorting currencies and looking to create downturns so that they profit both ways. As the market crashes, they're profiting that way, and if the market goes back up, they'll profit that way too. And because they're holding the debt that they're putting us into, they're profiting by making us slaves to that debt. So anyway, this has a name when government is in bed with private entities, and that name is fascism. Fascism is the bundling of private entities with the state, where the state and the private entities control the market. We might otherwise know this as corporate cronyism. And under our current government, our entire political process is totally controlled by this illegal and immoral relationship. But these relationships aren't new. All major parties have played this game to some extent. If we are to restore the control of each constituency back to its constituents, our duly elected MPs must put an end to these unholy marriages between private entities and the state, or we will no longer have even a semblance of representative democracy. And that's where we are at present. That this government would make deals which were clearly illegal, found by judges, found by the own ethics commissioner as being illegal, found by their own attorney general as being inappropriate. They've literally brought this nation to an economic standstill, and yet they continue to spend with impunity on social engineering programs that institutions like Soros's foundation, Open Society Foundation, and like the Tides Foundation, they want this. And of course, there's a reason they want it, because it serves their end. Their end is to, rebuild Babylon. And we can see that this effect, the story of the Tower of Babel, they wanted to build a thing that would reach unto heaven, man-made system that would reach unto heaven. And they became struck with confusion as they ran smack dab into the face of reality, which these people are more than happy to ignore. As they run smack dab into the face of reality, it literally becomes impossible for people to communicate with one another anymore. It would seem as though they do not speak the same language. And that's why it's now virtually impossible to have an intelligent, reasonable, rational dialogue with people from the postmodern left, and perhaps almost as difficult to have a reasonable, rational dialogue with people on the alt-right. They don't understand the rule of law. They don't understand our system of governance. They don't understand the Westminster parliamentary system and how it is supposed to function. They don't understand the role of constitutional law to limit inappropriate actions of the government. And they don't understand common law and our inherent rights and obligations under that law. There isn't a day that goes by when the executive, when the legislature, and the judiciary are not attacking the very laws that we have founded this nation upon, the very laws that will allow all to be treated equally under the law without regard for their personal identity. And instead, they're replacing it with some perverse form of identity politics where we've ripped the blinders off of Lady Justice who isn't supposed to know who you are. It was John Graves Simcoe's first assertion, even before he made the first government in Upper Canada. I will have Europeans, Africans, and North American natives treated the same under the law. So this has been an issue ever since he founded this righteous idea, which of course came from Britain and its parliamentary system and its constitutional laws, that we should all be equal before the law. The whole system is being corrupted by the radical postmodern left. They're using smoke screens to hide their real agenda. It isn't about victimhood. It isn't about justice for the downtrodden. It's about one thing: their power, and making us slaves to their dictates. And now, the best way to make somebody a slave, of course, is to impoverish them. And that's what this virus has managed to do. And so one would need to wonder, how could such a wonderful, perfectly designed attack against what was happening prior to this virus becoming an issue now makes that appear secondary, and people aren't focusing on that at all? My advice is this: quit running around like Henny Penny, thinking that the sky is falling. Speak to your MPs and demand that the rule of law be restored. We have no choice if we are to do this peacefully, because our system of government is being stolen from us by oligarchs and deviants that swore that they would uphold it. Now think about that. These people can commit the greatest crimes that if you or I were to commit them, we'd be in jail, of course, as we should. And yet they can do it without suffering consequence. Ask yourself, what private business owner can continue to make terrible business decisions and not go broke? There's no possible way, because there's no business model that could support such nonsense. But these people know that they have unending access to not just our money, the money that we currently have, but money that we don't even have yet, that they have stolen from our children's and our grandchildren's future. Pierre Elliott Trudeau did the same thing. It took over 30 years to cure the damage that totalitarian sympathizing oligarch had caused. When I bought my first house, mortgage rates went up to 20%. And now, under this ridiculously false low rate of mortgage, trying to offset a crisis that's inevitable, you cannot borrow your way to prosperity. It is impossible. There is no economic model that would allow such foolishness to work. And yet, we're told everything's fine. I just wonder how goddamn stupid they must think Canadians to be, to continue to swallow their horse shit. Have you had enough? I've had enough. This is not the nation I was born into, and there were plenty of problems back then. But you know, I teach total quality. One of the things we learned is that the Toyota production system, which was a very highly advanced form of statistical process control and process improvement, it wasn't a revolution that created it. It built itself upon the Ford production system, which worked wonderfully for years. All advances are evolutionary, never revolutionary. These people have the unmitigated gall to constantly march forward. This is progress. If this is progress, then I'm a one-legged Afghanian hermaphrodite transtesticle. Because I don't see any progress here. I see these idiots moving us back to the Dark Ages. These useful idiots for neo-Marxism. This postmodern idiocy that is destroying every single principle and foundation of society. From the family to the church to reasonable morals. They're attacking every single thing upon which Canada was founded. I hope you're getting as concerned as I am, because we need to stick together and do something. It may be time to return to 1837 and have a look at what Mackenzie and Papineau did and why. And why, although they didn't overthrow the government, they weren't successful in that, why it resulted in the Baldwin Act being passed and limited suffrage coming to Upper Canada. We need to understand that we need to put our foot down. It is not time to continue to think that merely by voting in the right guy that it's going to fix this problem, because this problem is no longer fixable through the normal democratic process. There's some far more drastic means that need to be taken. I'm not advocating violence, by the way, but I am advocating that these people, need to be assured that the rule of law under them is being upheld and that they are prosecuted in a court of law in accordance with the law. Thanks for listening. You have a great day.